Hi, this is Margaret Meloni, and welcome to the Death Dhamma Podcast. Together we will consider life, death, and impermanence. Because in between birth and death, we lose things. Not just our glasses and our keys. We lose identities, relationships, ideas, and more. But what we can gain right now is facing this together, and we will gain freedom, peace, and progress on our path. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Death Dhamma Podcast. Here we are, episode 1 of season 2, where I speak with the generous and compassionate Justin Whitaker. And I say that because it's true, he is, and because I actually interviewed him back in season 1, and then, newbie podcaster that I am, I lost the audio file. And I remembered our discussion, and part of our discussion was about a loss that wasn't necessarily a death, and that stuck with me and became the inspiration for season 2. And the good news is when I went to Justin and had to share with him that I lost the audio file, he graciously agreed to speak with me again. And so today we get to benefit from his generosity.
So I'm Justin Whitaker, and I'm currently a senior correspondent for Buddhist Global. And before that, I was a lecturer at Hong Kong University. I've taught in universities in the US and in the UK. I have a PhD in Buddhist ethics, which is where all that comes from. And yeah, I grew up here in Montana. I'm back in Montana now after a couple great years in Hong Kong.
Nice.
Really interesting time there, certainly during the uprisings there for pro-democracy. And then, of course, we were, I think, a couple 100 miles from Wuhan when COVID kicked off. So we were at the front line of all of that. And I was warning my friends in America, like, this is coming. This is going to hit you. And then I moved to America in the middle of it all because my wife got a great job back here, and I'm near family, near old friends. So happy to be back here.
Everyone, I want you to know that at this point, we continued our discussion and shared some thoughts on COVID and differences between how things have been handled in different locations. And that is definitely an important discussion because it does talk about things we thought would be different or things we wished would be different. And so I've taken that discussion and I've made that our episode 2 for the season. And what I want to do now is turn your attention to a time in his life where Justin shares with us how life went very differently than he thought it would. Things that you've seen in life, experiences of, the loss of a thing or an idea or a relationship, what something you've observed where there was something you thought something was going to be a certain way and then it wasn't.
This takes us back about 15 years. I was 27, and I'll just say off the bat, it was the loss of a very close relationship. I had gotten engaged, and it was whirlwind romance. I was just starting my PhD. She was a PhD student who was kind of moving into the work world, and we just clicked, and everything fell into place. It was magical from my perspective at the time. And I remember, I don't know, a lot of people when they're young, they create these relationship checklists. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is somebody who really checks off all of the boxes I could think of. And she's really into me. How could I be so lucky?
Yeah, so amazing, right?
It was so amazing. I felt on top of the world. And so we got engaged within about 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
And then I went to England for my doctorate. She stayed in the US. And things just started to get very strained. And after a couple of months of that, I moved back. I moved in with her. And things didn't come back together. Everything stayed strange. She stayed distant, defensive, unsure. She was very unhappy, but she was still very dead set on us getting married. And at a certain point, I was kind of slowly breaking down as I was trying to fix all these problems that were flaring up in our relationship, and things that were coming up for her. And eventually I kind of broke down, and I was talking to this nice couple that was doing pre-Cana counseling for us. It's kind of the Catholic.
Yes, I come from that background too. I'm very familiar with that. In fact, I think my parents sometimes volunteered to lead some of those counseling sessions. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So it's a wonderful service. We were not Catholic at the time, but this older Catholic couple kind of offered, and we were interested just as a process of getting to know each other more deeply and kind of spiritually and fully. So we were doing that. And the gentleman who was kind of counseling me, I remember him saying one day, he said, "Run, don't walk out of there."
Wow, that's pretty specific.
Yes.
And also not in any way neutral, but was probably important.
I think he was responding to my level of just lostness.
Okay.
And being at the end of my rope, trying to again put out all these fires that kept coming up, and I was lost. I had no idea what was going on. How could something so ideal and so perfect become such a mess of confusion in what seemed like such a short period of time? And so I packed all my things, rented a car, and drove across the country back home.
Okay.
And I mean, that was a 5-day road trip, and it was just being in a complete fog.
Yes.
Of what had happened, and I could feel this kind of rubber band tying me to this woman, this relationship, this place. And as I drove, that becoming more and more strained, and just wondering, am I going to be able to fix this from afar, or is this over? And again, just kind of being in that fog of loss.
Of loss. I thank you for that phrase, the fog of loss. I think that is something we encounter, any of us, in different scenarios where something is unraveling or has unraveled. And I'm not putting this on you, but I will say for my own self, where I'm maybe still in a little bit of denial or surprise about it.
Yeah. I was in denial for probably 2 more months, even after that.
Okay.
And yeah, again, because it all felt so fast from that ideal. And, I think that this is kind of a red flag when a relationship just feels so perfect at once. But I was craving for that. I had become almost addicted to that perfect relationship sense or scenario. And my brain just couldn't process that wasn't real. And that, maybe the worst of it wasn't also, the whole story are real. And there was something in the middle that I needed to figure out. My brain was not able to put all that together. I just terribly craved somehow getting back to that initial idealistic moment. So denial is, powerful.
And yet, if we can, I was just curious, so we go back to that man listens to you and then gives you this advice, but there was absolutely part of you that went all in with that advice. It sounds like, if what you're saying is he said this thing, and then you're like, I went home and packed and left. So there was a part of you that was acknowledging the wisdom of what he was sharing with you. Maybe even do you think it's fair to say he was telling you something that you had been telling yourself, but you weren't listening yet? I don't know if that's true. I
haven't come to that myself. I think if I had been telling myself that, I haven't heard that yet. Right. I think at the time I was so caught up in trying to fix things and trying to figure out how we got so far off course. But I think his phrase and his wisdom really cut through my scheming mind of trying to fix and trying to put things back place, he just kind of cut through that, kind of like that Zen wisdom of, hitting the student with the stick. Yeah. Like, just stop, get away, like, and think about things from there.
Like, that is a good analogy. Thank you for that. Like the Zen, like they tell the stories of the Zen master, kind of whacking you with the stick. Yeah. And it was I guess, a verbal, emotional whack with the stick, wasn't it?
Yep. Yeah. And I would say it absolutely came from a place of compassion on his part. Mm-hmm. And maybe just sensing a need to cut through my, perhaps to him, rambling mind of uncertainty and craving and clinging.
Well, that's a very difficult thing because you made a commitment, and with a commitment, there are attachments, in romantic relationships and other relationships, we have attachments, and you probably felt committed to having it work.
Yep.
And it sounds like you're saying, even though she was saying she was unhappy, she was also saying she really wanted to marry you.
Yep.
So you had this promise, like you had this promise together.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a lot. And when you left, I believe in a way this was a surprise, because you were walking around with these things, and then you got the Zen stick whack, and then you acted, but it seems like, that came as a surprise. And as you were leaving, do you think you were going away to regroup, or did you think at that time, no, this is it, it's over?
Just to regroup. I absolutely thought, this was a self-preservation move for me, and we'll figure it out later, was kind of my sense.
Right.
Where I was living with her was over on the East Coast, away from all of my community, my family. So I think he really sensed that I needed to get back grounded. And so that was my intention at the time. Get grounded, kind of think things through, and take it from there.
And then eventually we can say that this became a death of a relationship. When do you feel like it became clear, like this is a death of a relationship?
I don't remember the exact day. I remember one day, probably about 2 to 3 months later, she and I had still been kind of corresponding a little bit by email, and I wrote an email saying, like, I don't consider us engaged anymore.
Okay.
Like, end of story. And she mailed me back the engagement ring and tried to call me. I didn't take the call, and have never spoken to her since.
Okay.
And that was when I was able to kind of verbalize that this is done. I'm done trying. And I think, up until that point, there were glimmers of hope on her part of, we can solve this, just need to do this and this. And that was the moment where I was just like, nope.
Good for you. Because, sometimes these things go on, and like one person's planning a wedding. I mean, we don't know what she was doing, but sometimes someone is still planning a wedding, and the other person's like, why are you doing that? No. Yeah. And, we know that the good news is now you move on, you live happily ever after, you meet the right person, you have a lovely child, and your career and everything. But, at the time I feel like that was a very difficult death.
Yeah. And it was absolutely 2 to 3 months of just being in this fog. And I think there were moments where I could almost come up for air and have some clarity about things. And then I'd sink back in and, wonder what had happened to the last year of my life. What had I gotten tied up in? And, it was just through I'd say, grace of a lot of good friends and family helping me along that I just kind of kept moving forward with things. My mom is a master's in social work, and I remember one road trip home with her, probably in the 1 to 2 month time after the initial breakup, just saying, I still feel so terrible. Oh. She said, you should. You've been through so much. Like, this is how you should feel, and give yourself time. And she kind of allowed me to feel what I was feeling. Because again, at the time, I just don't think I was wise enough to want to let myself feel that. I wanted to kind of figure it out and make the bad feelings go away. And she said, no, just feel terrible. You should.
Oh, what a gift.
Mm-hmm.
I think really, what a gift, because I think that in our society, after a certain point, kind of like some of our friends just kind of want to be like, oh, Justin, cheer up, oh, come on, let's go have some beers, forget about it. Or, whatever, you and your friends would do socially at that time. And how lovely for your mom. And I don't know if your mom comes, from Buddhism at all. I think at that time you were studying Buddhism, but you're going to have to remind me.
Yeah, I had been studying for about 5, 6, 7 years. I started practicing Buddhism around 2000. This was 2007, 8. And I was actually going off to start a PhD in Buddhist ethics. So I was deep into it myself.
You're right in the middle of it. And your mom is saying this thing that now our teachers, even, across the different traditions say, which is you have to, but feel your feelings. When you sit down to meditate, if you feel sad, then feel sad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, recognize it. The Tara Brach meditation on rain, recognize, accept, investigate, and the N is non-identify. Like you're not those feelings, but you're having them. So,
but I just think I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself, but like that from your mom, especially like from a parent, to say, because that's so validating, right? To say, you should not, like she wants you to feel badly. She's not saying like, oh, you should feel badly, shame on you. She's saying you've been through a difficult thing. Of course you feel badly. Yeah. Feel it.
Yeah. And accept that, and not, don't blame yourself. Don't, think you're defective for feeling this way. Like, this is natural, and that's okay. So yeah, it was very helpful. Again, I was kind of fighting what was happening, fighting the reality that was in front of me of just feeling terrible. And she helped me let go of that fight.
Yeah, there was nothing wrong with you. You were a human experiencing a difficult thing.
Yeah.
Now, so aside from your mom, which again, amazing support there, do you look back at any of your Buddhist practice during that time, and were there some things that you found to be useful, or also even maybe not useful, because not all of our practices are perfect? Mine's not. Maybe yours.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to, I guess, sign up for a retreat, which took place about a month after the initial breakup, and I was it was at a family camp in the mountains, not far from my parents' house. And so I was there. It's just a 2-day retreat in the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition. And I remember at one point, one of the teachers, a psychologist, said something like, when we examine our depression, quite often beneath it is anger. And when we examine that anger, beneath it is clinging to a reality which no longer exists.
Ooh, okay.
So I remember either before or after that crying in one of the bunkhouses while everybody else was meditating, because I was just kind of shedding what I felt was this depression over the breakup. But it was, beneath that was, anger over the fact that everything had fallen apart. And then realizing that was all just because of this clinging to an idealized relationship, an idealized person, an idealized reality, which just wasn't real. And so when I was able to kind of look at my own clinging and the pain that was causing me and let go of some of that, there's just a tremendous lifting,
relief
of relief, just again that fog going away. It came back within a few days, I guess, but at the time it felt miraculous. It felt again like the sun coming out on a cold and rainy day, and that has just really stuck with me, that need, or the power of looking within and seeing one's own clinging, and how that's really causing these other levels of suffering, and which was manifesting for me as depression and just sadness.
And I thank you for sharing it, because I think it really kind of shows how these things integrate, the integration of depression to anger, to sadness and attachment. And it brings us back to the Four Noble Truths. And something I also appreciate you acknowledging is that in that moment during that retreat, it helped you, like you said, like the sun coming out on a cloudy day, but you also acknowledged that like that wasn't the 100% fix.
Yeah.
that there were days when the clouds came back.
Yeah.
Days when the clouds came back. And then on those days when the clouds came back, did you use something similar to bring this, to help break through again?
Yeah. When I had a chance, I would simply meditate and simply try to drop into, whatever was coming up for me. The retreat was amazing, as I'm sure you've experienced and people have.
Right.
You go so deep inward in a retreat setting. Meditation on a daily basis is great, but you can only get so far in that 20 or 40-minute sitting. And so I feel like the meditations I was able to do after helped me maintain like a connection to that light. But it was really in the context of retreat that I was able to come out completely. And after that, it was more of a gradual process. So a sudden realization followed by gradual keeping it up, maintenance, I guess.
It's like the debate over sudden enlightenment versus gradual enlightenment.
Yeah.
I remember one time in a class, and even though it was an academic class, one of our instructors said, like, well, which is it? And I blurted out both. And then he looked at me like I was an idiot. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry I said anything. And then I tried to make it better. And then you can guess where I'm going with this. I don't know that I made it better, other than maybe I learned just to be quiet once in a while. But I said, it's like algebra, which, who takes Buddhism and compares it to algebra? But I was like, it's like you look at these math problems over and over again and you don't get it. But then all of a sudden one day you get it.
Yeah.
So thank you for being nice to me about that analogy. Because trust me, in the room at that time, I was the only one who knew what I was saying. Well, I'm not sure I knew what I was saying. I'll just say I'm the only one who thinks that they knew. Yeah, I remember he just looked at me like I was an idiot. But
he's probably trying to keep your ego toned down. He's like, she's got it, but I can't let her know that she's got it just yet.
Maybe. I don't know. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I think it's really, I love that we're acknowledging the value of the retreat, but then the reality, because I do worry sometimes, because sometimes I think, especially when we're new to retreats, that there's like, I'm going to go on this retreat and it's going to be amazing and it's going to fix everything.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it gave the tools, right?
Yeah. But I was probably, in most retreats I've been on, there's one person locked away in the bunkhouse crying at some point, because we go to the retreat, somebody's going to go with those expectations, maybe a lot of people. And maybe that's the best you can get from a retreat, is really tap into some deep pain and let it open up and come into that contact with it. I've been on many retreats where I didn't have that dramatic an event because I just didn't have anything maybe that
right. You didn't have anything at that time in your life that needed it, that opening up, I guess.
Yeah. So I think some people definitely, we can go to the retreats with overly strong expectations. But I think in general, they do allow you to tap into some things, and maybe that's going to be great wisdom and bliss, or maybe it's going to be, a ball of tears and, things that you don't even know are there that you have to work through.
I think that's one of the interesting things is, I know recently I was sitting and something came up and I was like, oh, I didn't know that bothered me. Apparently it does. Because here it is sitting next to me. I'm like, oh, okay. So you're mad at people. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yep.
Yeah. Then also there's like, what am I going to do about it? Well, right now I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to continue my meditation and let it just. So with these other things, do you feel like you have like a favorite teaching or, something that you think is relevant that would definitely help others with this type of a experiencing of a death?
Oh, I can't think of any, particular teaching, just realizing impermanence is so real in our lives, and kind of watching our emotions as we cling to things, cling to people, cling to relationships, and idealize them. And I feel like that's such a practice that you have to live it and fail, and live it and fail, and live it and fail to really get. That don't think there's much in the texts that I would point to that is going to be a great help. Maybe the teaching about community and friendship, and
yes, because you did talk about the value of when you moved away and you were back into your community of support.
And my friend Larry McKay, the pre-Cana counselor, kind of sticking with me and kind of meeting with him regularly, and just him being there for me as a sounding board and a place of wisdom was tremendously helpful in my healing process. I remember two other instances with him. Once, I don't remember which happened chronologically at which time, but we climbed a mountain. We were watching a sunset, and he said something like, you know, you're going to find the good in all of this. You're going to find the good. And I just remember thinking, no, like, you're crazy, old man.
But you didn't push him off the mountain.
I didn't, no.
Okay. Right on.
I knew he had with some wisdom, but I just remember thinking, you know, I'll be happy when I've moved past all this and I've gotten past the pain. I have no expectations of finding good in this tremendous kind of mistake I've made or just mess I've been in. But I really think that's borne out in kind of me having a greater sensitivity toward, you know, myself in difficult relationships, but also others, and just realizing, you know, relationships are complex. And, you know, my ex, the ex-fiance, had really kind of intense, strange relations with her parents. And you know, I just kind of realized a lot of people have that. And it's something that a lot of people are working through. And maybe that's helped me kind of soften any kind of judgment for people who are having a hard time or are, you know, difficult in my life. Just kind of thinking,
well, so thinking of that, and you didn't say it this way, but I'm going to rephrase it in saying that I think that now you are able to have a place of compassion for other people who are going through these relationship challenges. And what advice would you give now to someone? So now you're Larry and you're on the mountain. What would you say to someone?
To accept what's coming up, is the feelings that are coming up, and give it time. I think that was one of the greatest healing factors for me. And again, the kind of wisdom that time heals seems so trite until you've needed time to heal.
Until you needed the time.
Yeah. And I think really just know that you'll get through it. Know that this is part of life that so many people have been through in one way or another. And that none of us escape this world kind of unscarred by loss. I'm sure you've heard the Kisa Gotami story, and I've heard that, and I've repeated it. You know, once we realize that other people have had this incredible loss in their lives, it makes it much easier for us to accept it in ourselves. I think again, that story with my mom is I wasn't accepting this loss or that it could happen to me. So yeah, I guess recognize the universality of loss.
That's a great phrase. Recognize the universality of loss. Thank you for that. Maybe that's something we can all do no matter where we are in life. So, you know, like I was saying, like, what would you say to a young, you know, someone who's going through that now? And as you're talking, you know, and I joked about, did you push him off the mountain? And the reason I made that joke, shame on me, is because I know that younger Margaret could really go back. Thank goodness there's no time travel. Could really go back and apologize to people who were trying to give me wisdom. Because like you said, things that maybe sound trite are so true. And there was this version of me. I don't think I hope I never said this out loud, but I will tell you what I was playing in my head sometimes was like, shut up, that's not true. And shame on me. But I know that that's how it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And I probably said that to a few people myself or thought it, at least. It is hard. I mean, and I go back to just saying I was in such a fog, and there's that fog of loss, and, great wisdom can, sit in your lap and you just don't see it because you're not seeing anything when you're really caught up in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're lucky to have those people, and we're lucky that they had the patience with us to, stay by us as we kind of walked through our haze. And
you're right, to have somebody to realize this is a human being, there's value in this person, and he's suffering, and he's not seeing that he's going to be okay, and even maybe he's not really ready to listen to me. So like in the case of Larry and that, but he kept in touch with you. He could have just gone like, well, he's not my kid, not my problem, right?
Yeah,
but he didn't.
Exactly.
He didn't.
Showed incredible compassion for me.
Yeah, exactly. Or he could have said, well, I got him out of it, now he's on his own.
Yeah, exactly.
I got him to move, now he's on his own, but he didn't.
Yeah.
And that's lovely.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, it is.
How fortunate we are that there are people who will help, even if we are not ready for it. I guess I'll say it that way. Yeah. That is lovely. Thank you so much. I appreciate you very much. You've been listening to the Death Dhamma Podcast with your host, Margaret Meloni. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on margaretmeloni.com, margaretmeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.